go ahead and get started. And the first item on the agenda. Oh. All right. Is it on? Oh, now it's on. All right. So the first item on the agenda would be we're going to have our discussion item, and so I'd like to turn it over to our superintendent, and then who will turn it over to our facilitator for tonight, our Terry Lynn Finders.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you all for coming this afternoon. I know it's difficult at the end of the day to do one more thing, and it's Monday, so we're already starting the week out, burning the midnight oil, if you will. So again, I appreciate it. I really want to try to frame today in the work that we are going to do collectively together, and really reiterate a few things. One, this is just the beginning of a process. It's the beginning of a process that we will engage in our conversations and really clarifications for the next 3 or 4 months. We aren't the only ones that will be engaged in this process from today. We will take this out to other stakeholders to get input and some feedback relative to really clarification and what does the words and what does some of these core values, the mission, the vision, what does it stand for, so we're all collectively have the same understanding. You know, real quick, who was here the last time the vision, mission, and values were really crafted? So in the room, if I could see some hands, who was part of this last time?
Well, there was staff part of that, but the board was not made part of that.
Okay, so this was the mainly staff generated. So really trying to bring in.
Would you agree?
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So, you know, something that's been very clear to me from the time that I was first selected back in June and then July was really a desire and a need from the board for the district really to become inclusive with labor partners, with parents, with community, with board members. So that's what we start today, because really the vision and the mission and the values is really statements that we all agree to and we all clearly understand, and that's really to a large degree of what we're going to do today. So first I'd like to set the stage, and then I'm going to turn it over to Terrell for a bit, and Terrell and I are really going to work hand in hand. I'm going to work to kind of ground it, and she's going to ask the questions and make sure that everyone collectively is giving input and voice is heard, and she's asking the questions from a different vantage point, so we want to be able to do that together. Like I said, today begins a process, and it really is going to be a multi-stepped process. We will be going out to the, not community necessarily, but out to other stakeholders within our district to be able to clarify. Today is not about wordsmithing, about changing the vision or the mission or the values. We really have a pretty strong beginning to the vision, the mission, but it's really just the clarification and collectively having an understanding of what each of the words mean within the different statements. You know, something that is important, and I'm sensing that perhaps our labor partners thought this started at 4:30 because our closed session usually starts at 4:30 because they all said that they were going to be here. Really, part of this work, we wanted to make sure that the folks that are closest to our students have a voice in this work, because ultimately, each and every day, who is in front of our students, and that is our teachers and our staff. And so we want to make sure that we get, and our administrators, we want to make sure that we get their voice. So a little bit about what we're going to do. We're going to pose a few questions today and then ask for input. My role is partly is facilitation in addition to Terrell, but also I'm still in the looking, listening, and learning stage. This really, again, I'm going to reiterate, it's not about changing and modifying what's on the sheet in front of you, and you do have the current vision, mission, and core values in front of you, but it's really the clarification piece. So with that, I want to turn it over to Terrell, and she's going to first, let's get everybody, let's introduce ourselves for the record, for those that are watching, and maybe anyone that's new to the table. And I know that is not Brad, so we're going to get some clarification there. And then Terrell is going to begin.
Okay, very good. So we want to start with introductions here. Good afternoon. I'm Marla Mack, Associate Superintendent of Ed Services.
Good afternoon. Tim Zerly, Associate Superintendent, Business Services.
Good afternoon. Mike Henderson, Interim Associate Superintendent, Human Resources.
Good afternoon. Mark Herbst, Assistant Superintendent, Modesto City Schools, SALPA.
Jason Rabiosi, Installation Support Manager for Computer Systems. I am the MCS Managers Board Vice President. I was asked to sit in for Brad, who's out today.
Thank you.
Charlene West, Trustee.
Cindy Marks, Trustee.
Adolfo Lopez, Trustee.
John Walker, Trustee / Vice President.
Amy Newman, Trustee and President.
Go back.
Good afternoon. I'm Danielle Hinkle, and I'm a Senior Director for Ed Services.
Good afternoon, Janine Zambo, and I am the Social Science Coordinator for 712.
Becky Fortuna, Public Information Officer.
Chrissy Mastras, Executive Secretary to the Superintendent.
Good afternoon, Gladys Duarte, Translator.
Okay, very good. Well, it's nice to be back with you again. I'm here just to facilitate the conversation, not to add my opinion, although my children will be stunned beyond words that I would participate in a meeting and not offer my opinion. So let that be on the record. I want to begin with a quick story that will help. Yes. Oh, thank you. Thank you, Ms. Marks. So begin with a very quick story on the value of vision and mission statements in the context of the trustees' work. And the power of having these and importance of having these discussions about words and word meaning. When I introduced myself to you last time we were together, I shared with you that I was a trustee in Las Virgenes, served for elected 3 terms to that board. I remember sitting in a retreat with our board there in Las Virgenes, reviewing our mission statement. A couple newly elected folks to the board. Now, there was only one of the 5 trustees, only one had been involved in actually writing the mission statement. So we all inherited the language. And it was a very good mission statement. We didn't take issue with it, didn't want to rewrite it per se, but there wasn't agreement on what some of the words meant. Specifically, there were words helping students to achieve their unique potential. And one trustee said that means getting every child into the best possible college. And 4 of us didn't agree with that. And we all started sharing what that meant. And the superintendent sitting there, you know, I thought maybe she was frustrated. And she said, this conversation has to take place. We have to arrive at consensus on what these words mean, or else a superintendent has a boss with 5 different points of view on what equity means or whole child means or whatever words we've landed on. And she's giving direction to an organization that's splintered. So your superintendent being new to these words and the board acknowledging they really weren't involved in drafting this language, the purpose of today's conversation is to pluck out words and talk about what those mean. And so all thoughts are welcome, appreciated. The objective today isn't to lobby one another and persuade each other's thinking. It's to hear from one another, and your superintendent could do this individually with each of you, but that would be shuttle diplomacy and you wouldn't be hearing from one another. As Sarah said, she will be collecting all these thoughts, sharing them with administration and the union leadership and stakeholders within the organization, and coming back to you with language definition that affirms, reaffirms what you're thinking these words mean, or identifying gaps and trying to pin down precisely what they mean. You know, I think all of us know the classroom teacher wants to know exactly what you're thinking. They're pleasers. They want to do what you want. They just need to know what you want. And so that's what we're starting today. Thank you for that. if there aren't any questions, then we're going to start with values, which are at the bottom of the page. Usually it's the values that kind of feed up to the vision and the mission, if you will. So we're just going to start there. Again, just a reminder, we're not lobbying anybody because tonight is not a vote or a decision. It's just, it is a dialogue. So all thinking is welcome and appreciated, staff included, please. So let's just start at the top here with values. As employees of Modesto City Schools, we must. This first bullet point, I'll read it, and then I want to pull out some words and ask you to talk about what they mean. Exhibit the skills, knowledge, and behavior expected from members of a highly trained profession. What does that mean, highly trained profession? What does that look like? Thoughts?
When I think of someone highly trained, I think of someone who's professional. And as a professional, I think all of us in here consider ourselves as professionals. And what I enjoy in any of my dealings with people being treated as a professional, I like people to have trust that I know what I'm doing, trust that I'm competent, and some flexibility to do my job for which I'm trained. I think sometimes people who consider themselves professionals sometimes feel that they're micromanaged, and I know very few people who enjoy that. And so I think it's important that if we have highly trained professionals in our school district, that we should value that and treat them as such.
Very good. Thank you. More thoughts?
I think that the training is a process, and so trained here is in the past tense in the way that's written, so highly trained. I think that the professionals in our district, they're going, it's a process, it's a training, it's a learning, we are raising lifelong learners, and we need to exhibit lifelong learning, and we need to be lifelong learners. And so this is an active verb as opposed to a past tense verb. So I think that training is a process and not just a place you land, and it's a continued process and an obligation. And that's why there's continuing education requirements for any professional. My own, your own, all of us have continuing education requirements. So I think it is a process.
Welcome, gentlemen.
Hey, guys.
Yeah. So just to bring you guys up to speed, I know I'm not sure if times got mixed or traffic. I appreciate you coming, so thank you for that. So just to try to frame what we want to do today, we really framed it around, we have a current mission, vision, and core values as identified in the last strategic plan. Our role today is not necessarily to wordsmith this or to change this, but to really clarify. So collectively, all of us together, myself, cabinet, union partners, board, community, can understand what the words mean relative to. Right now, we started with highly trained professionals. What does that mean? Do we all have an understanding of what that means? So really, that's our purpose today, is to just clarify, calibrate, get feedback, get input. We're not changing anything at this point from today, because this is just a beginning. We'll take this out. We'll get some other feedback from other stakeholders within Modesto City, and then bring it back in January to hopefully have a collective understanding of what these words are. So With that, thank you for coming. Appreciate it. Appreciate your time.
Yes, and we began from the bottom up. We didn't start. You have not missed the discussion on vision and mission. We are starting with values, and with the very first sort of set of words that we pulled out to hear each individual share what does this mean, so that it has meaning for your superintendent as she gives direction to the organization. We were looking at the words highly trained profession. What does that mean? Working in an organization that embraces highly trained professionals and supports highly trained professionals. A trustee shared that means, and you can reiterate for yourself, but we'll see if I captured what you said, that if we are highly trained professionals, we'd like to be treated as such. We'd like to be given the liberty to apply our judgment, to do the work that is necessary and essential for the students who are in front of us, to be treated like a highly trusted and trained professional. And we're also hearing that it's an active set of words that we seek to be lifelong learners, modeling lifelong learning. We teach that to our students, and we'd model that as well. So those are thoughts we've heard thus far, and then two highly trained professionals joined us, and so we have an opportunity to regroup. So thank you for that. And please feel free to join in the conversation. You are here because your superintendent wants to hear from you, and the board wants to hear from you. So I'll turn to trustees and ask for additional input.
I want to sort of meld between both what Dr. West and Trustee Newman stated a minute ago, because if we're looking at highly trained and we're talking about it being an evolving process, and we're also looking at trust and flexibility, I think that value goes back to when we talk about professional development, that those teachers are part of that process, and that it isn't this top-down thing, which is what we discussed last time. Is that what is it that they see that they need help in, or where can they provide value? I think the most positive thing we heard when we talked about this at the last meeting where it came up was the tandem teaching. And was that something that everybody supports, and how do we leverage those things so that you do have trust and flexibility and input and buy-in, so that it is an evolving process that everybody actually has faith in. Whether you end up with where you wanted to be or not, pieces and parts of it get put in place so that there's buy-in. And I think that's where you end up with sort of this evolving process that's very big, going from K to 12. Those needs are very diverse. How do you put those pieces in place, or at least incorporate them into that statement, if that makes sense?
Thank you. Ms. Marks?
Are you calling me out? Oh my goodness. So when I look at this, I actually really like the statement because it brings value to the staff members, and by just saying highly trained profession or professionals, which I appreciated what you said. So I like the statement, and I think that when I was listening to Trustee Newman talk, when she was talking about trained being past tense, and just that whole dynamic of being past tense and being ongoing, or ongoing learners, I was looking at the second to last bullet, thinking that might, because it's acquiring and sharing new knowledge and information to provide the best to our students. So the acquiring to me is a continuation of the training. So I look at highly trained as you've worked to get here. It's taken a lot to get to the positions that you're at in different ways, and that you're sharing that information and you're exhibiting those skills and knowledge from what you've learned. So I appreciate that about our staff.
Thank you.
I guess that just puts me on the spot to talk. No, I see it as having to relate with trust. If we are hiring them on as professionals, or we're hiring them on as trained, we have to make sure that they stay relevantly trained, but they also have that flexibility to get creative and actually show what they've learned, right? So we need to have trust in our staff's judgment and our staff's training, and our staff's experience, because for the same reason they are what we're hoping to be is one of the best school districts in the county and in the state. So I think that we need to allow for that room to them to also show the work that they can bring to the table. So I think for me, what brings up is the issue of trust and experience and work effort.
Interesting from this discussion, what I'm hearing is not just a lens on our teachers and our employees demonstrating that they're highly trained, but an organization that has created a collaborative process for the training, and also an environment where they can show their professionalism, apply their judgment. And so there's a lot of meaning to unpack behind these words, and to guide your superintendent. You can see where from this discussion she'd move forward, and if something felt or sounded particularly top down, she might say that's not how a professional organization behaves according to the discussion we were having here today. Yes.
I think it all comes down to respect. When we think of anyone in any field, if we're going to go to a doctor to have something checked out, and they are referred to us as being someone who's highly trained, we're very respectful of that, because they come represented, and they earn an automatic respect, I think, because of the highly trained. Whereas maybe if you go to, I'm just pulling this out, another country, and you get sick and you have to go to a hospital and someone's treating you and you don't know if they're highly trained, you're not going to have the same level of respect. So I think bottom line, it's implied that someone who is highly trained should be respected.
Thank you. Additional thoughts? Anybody? Everybody?
I think it gives an image of professionalism. I mean, when you look at something like that, or when you think about somebody who comes from a highly trained profession, you imagine somebody who holds themselves in a professional manner. And I agree with a lot of what you said, Dr. West, to be honest with you. But I see the word professionalism. I see somebody who's in control of their craft, somebody who's highly trained, somebody that knows what they're doing, and that they hold themselves as such.
And I'd add to that as we're working with students and young people, it speaks to me that we're held to a higher standard than many other professions, that we honor that.
I would say that would be interesting, because I danced around that one and left it alone. But I think that goes to the point at the top where it talks about behavior expected. I think if you're in classrooms, and I think this extends to parents or anybody else on a campus, if you're on a school site and you're interacting with children 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 11, 12, 13 years old, that you are held to a higher standard, because they're going to copy your actions if they look up to you as somebody that is respected. That behavior matters. And I skipped around that, but you brought it up, so I'll jump on it, because I think there is a higher standard. And I think the parents will hold us to a higher standard, that we don't go down certain roads when it comes to these children, and they're the priority, and that moves that bar.
Okay. I'm going to move on to other words. We can always come back. You can always come back. The second bullet, what does it mean to work together? Collaboration is the key to success at every level. Those words were pretty carefully chosen. Collaboration is the key to success at every level. I don't think they're just talking hierarchically, by the way, would be my guess. But thoughts on working together and collaboration?
A week, maybe less than a week ago, Tuesday, right? We were at the safety task force. Reverend Crosby talked about, and it's stuck to me. So like, not talking about a collaboration or partnership, but relationship. I think that partnership means that there's Collaboration, it means like that people are kind of forced to be and collaborate with each other. But I think that we need to start building partnerships for the success of our students, or relationships, where we're really like, collaboration is natural, and it's desired more than forced. Where we look at our common goals, and we focus on that, and that's our driving force, rather than end goals and targets. And then I know that has to come because the nature of it, but I think that we need to be, when we look at our values, is that we want to actually really partner and build relationships, for our goals and for the goals of our district. I mean, that's the way I want to start seeing as collaboration, more than just something that has to happen, to much more something that we desire and aim for the end goal.
I think it means letting go of your ego sometimes, because when we're not working together with the other pieces of helping those kids, and we hold ourselves separate from the teachers or the parents, it's really easy sometimes to focus on what we want, and that's not all the time what's for the best of the child. And so I think collaboration means compromise sometimes, and letting go a little bit of what you are demanding, and really what's going to work best for the kid. I learned that a long time ago when I was counseling with students, that if I didn't have the support of the parents, I was not able to help that child. I had to work with the parent. And it just means sometimes looking at things a different way, of being able to figure out what's going to be best for that particular kid. Letting go necessarily of what I want, and working collaboratively with someone.
I'd like to echo Dr. West on collaboration, and go a little further. Collaboration doesn't take place in a vacuum. I mean, this sentence, I like this sentence, because the first thing is we work together for the not for just for the sake of collaboration, but for the benefit of our students. So that's the first thing we're collaborating for. It modifies why we're collaborating. And so collaboration is just not for the sake of, oh, we're going to check that box. Oh, we collaborated. It's working together for the benefit of our students, our parents, our community, and ourselves. And I think, I don't know that I'd add anything to that, other than that collaboration isn't, collaboration for the sake of just collaborating is useless. But if it's modified by working together for our students, it's always about our students. We don't collaborate just because it's great to get out on Wednesdays early, and to sit around and at a staff meeting. I mean, nobody really wants to be there, right, guys? So I mean, it's for the benefit of exchanging ideas, and for the benefit of improving instruction, and doing what you do on the campuses each day better. That's the goal. So the collaboration has to be purposeful.
Mm-hmm. More thoughts?
Actually like Trustee Lopez's word, partnerships, better. I think that the question I have isn't one about this, but pulling it up to a higher level and asking ourselves, how do we as a board and a governance team enable that to happen? Because I don't think the 7 or 8 of us, well, superintendent maybe, but the 7 of us on the board aren't in a classroom. We're not teaching. I think our role at this point is to develop certainly a vision and a policy, but how do we enable that to happen and then let it go forward? I think that's the real decision in front of us, is how do we enable that process so that they can build relationships and partnerships and collaborate, and that we put that part, we're the what, they're the how.
Jason, I know you have something to say, but I want to speak to that for a second. I think that's exactly why we're here, and that is, how are you going to work to enable this? First, we have to have an understanding what collaboration is. Is collaboration around relationship building? Is it around partnership? Is it something we do together? What's the form? What's the process? Because we know collaboration is a big deal. It's a lot of conversation that we have, and it's not just with the teachers. It's with multiple departments and how they're working together to ensure efficiency and effectiveness and services to our site. So this is the first step to that. I agree. By the end of this process, is having a clear understanding of what collaboration is and how we define it, I think will help all of us in our conversations that we have working together if we have that same understanding.
And I just wanted to echo what Trustee Lopez had said about relationships, because I think when you form good relationships with other stake members, then collaboration just kind of springs from that relationship. You know, collaboration doesn't become something that you have to do. Collaboration becomes something that you will naturally want to do. If you're in a good relationship, that stems from respect from working in a highly trained professional organization, and that respect brings you back to that collaboration to where you realize you're here for the same reason. We all have the same goal. My role in it is very different than others, but we all have the same goal. And if we keep that kind of at our forefront, work to build those relationships so that you guys all understand that that's why I'm here, then I think that collaboration just kind of flows more naturally in that situation.
Dr. Noguchi, did we answer your question? I mean, you asked the key question, what is collaboration? Do you feel like we got enough on there that you...
Well, I think that's exactly what we're doing today, is trying to flesh out what that means to us, that language, then taking this out and asking others what that means, because at the end of the day, it's the collective understanding of what collaboration is. So yes, I've gotten exactly what's intended for this bullet, and I'm sure with others. So are we going to come up with that definition today? The answer is no, because we need to be able to get more input, and then we'll bring that back to the board to take a look at that to see if that resonates with this conversation, and then also your response to what other stakeholders have said also. So thank you for that.
He does. Yes,
Jason will pass you on.
Yeah. Okay.
It's videotaped.
Hi, too close. Yasser Herrera, Executive Director for Modesto Teachers Association. I just wanted to echo a couple of thoughts from what Adolfo said, and to kind of give a little bit of backstory, I think, to what I see as some of the main issues in terms of changing the culture of Modesto City Schools. And I think what I've seen so far from Dr. Noguchi has been very promising. Changing some practices, some procedures, some policies that we even on our side of the table kind of got into a rut of this is the way things were done because that's the way they were always done. And no one second guess whether we should be doing it that way. But Dr. Noguchi's experience coming from, especially from Elk Grove, where that wasn't the culture, that it wasn't so top-down driven, where it was always a kind of a feeling and sensation of us versus them, where collaboration was done to you, not with you, correct. So this is really a new sensation, a kind of new, it's a changing culture that's just starting to happen, but we can see the markers of that happening literally today. So that's an encouraging sight. Certainly that's going to take time, I think, both from the district side, from Dr. Noguchi's in terms of changing culture, but certainly even from our perspective of convincing our members, hey, when we talk about collaboration, we really mean it now. This is true collaboration, not the logo, what's on the letterhead, right? And that's going to take time. Certainly at the teaching to administrative level, but also just department level, where we could see some of our frustrations of certain departments not talking to Ed Services enough that they can't then talk to us about some of the technology issues. That flowing of communication, collaboration wasn't happening even in the brick building, let alone between administrators and teachers. So again, I'm encouraged by what I'm seeing so far.
Thank you. Okay, and a thumbs up. Very good. Okay, third bullet. I didn't really have any words we were going to pull out here as the superintendent and I reviewed this. Your character traits are widely promoted throughout the organization. Is there any comment here that a trustee or member of the team would like to share, or any clarifying questions that you have here?
When we come up with this collaboration, I think it's important to loop parents into why we do it. I think that the early release days are frustrating for our working parents, and so what is our goal for that? And so once we figure out how we do it, communicating with our parent stakeholders is really a key part of it. And I mean, while they wouldn't be able to say, oh, don't do it that day, during that time, certainly engaging them as to why we're doing it and what the benefit is to their student would be a helpful conversation to have, because it is difficult for our working parents.
And you're talking about collaboration time where there's release time and that all cycles back to a professional organization allows its professionals to group and problem solve and share best practices. We would certainly hope our physicians are talking to one another. We like to believe our teachers have the same privilege. So, but we need to help our parents understand that. Absolutely. So we're going to move to the bullet second from the bottom there, acquire and share new knowledge and information. Some important words here: to provide the best to our students, so all towards student. What does it look like to share new knowledge?
I think a couple of things go along with this. I think it goes back to highly trained professions. And if you're being highly trained profession, you're participating in professional development so that you can acquire that new knowledge and share that new knowledge, and having those opportunities for every person, not just the educator, but what about the classified people? What about whichever employee we have? We all should be trained in whatever we're working towards, that we all can learn. So that's sharing new knowledge and acquiring knowledge. But at the same time, it's also the sharing new knowledge goes back to the collaboration that we were just talking about, or the partnership, regarding being able to share that how in whichever way. You gave a great example that the doctors do, and educators should also do. And it also classified and any other staff should also have some opportunity to build and to share their knowledge with others.
Trustee Lopez, you're grabbing that microphone. You're hot. You're hot to go.
No, I see it as going back to what do we want, because I know we have a goal for our students, right? We want a goal for our students, but what's our goal for our staff? What's the goal for our teachers, for our administrators, for our district staff? Like, what kind of culture do we want to build in the district as well? I think about it. I'm really into soccer, and they were talking about new head coaches for a national team, and they were saying that there's a lot of good coaches that are that have the possibility of being in that national team, but that they were looking for someone that was incorporating new technology, that was incorporating a new fitness regimen, that incorporate a lot of, so those outdated coaches weren't going to get there, right? So they wanted someone specific that can envision soccer, the evolution of soccer over the next 10 years. That's exactly when I think about new knowledge. Is like, how are we teaching? How are we developing our staff? What do we want to see in them? What breed of teachers? What breed of administrators do we want to make here? Do we want to create in Master City Schools? So I see it as like getting additional training, getting additional, sending our staff out to learn from those innovative districts that are promoting something new, and what can we learn, so that at the end of the day we have the best staff here in the area. And so that's what I think about in new teaching, is how are we capacitating our staff to be top edge, that we're getting them prepared 10 years, 20 years out for what's to come. And when we talk about technology, that's going to be something that's going to steamroll over us in terms of new information.
I'm just going to tag on to what Adolfo said. I think I look back to when I first started in education, and I was young and green and so excited. And I would love for, as much as we can, I know we all have bad days, but I would love to see that excitement just bubble over, because when you're excited about something, whether it's a new place to shop or a new restaurant or something, you're so excited you want to tell all of your friends about it. And so when I say, when I hear share new knowledge, I love to see professionals working together, excited about something, and I can't wait to tell other people about this because it's exciting and it works. And I'm not unrealistic enough to think that's going to happen every day, because we have bad days, but I would love to see that excitement again, because teaching is an exciting profession, and we should be so passionate that we want to share that with our colleagues.
Go ahead.
You're right, and I can see that just being able to, I go back to the word collaborate, because to me, I remember seeing teachers that were really excited about something that they learned from another teacher. And they said, my students were struggling in this area, and then I went and visited a classroom, and there was this new idea in there, and I'm incorporating it into my classroom, and it's changing how my students are learning. And just to see them be excited about that. And then even having the BITSA, I don't know if we still have BITSA, but do we still have BITSA? Yeah. Okay, I thought we did. We just haven't talked about it very much. But just seeing BITSA and going into the night when the new teachers were coming in, and how they're, it's beginning teacher, can't remember what the SA is. Support, okay. But just helping them acquire those skills and knowledge that they needed to be able to help their students be successful, and having someone else kind of go alongside them for a little while just to help them gain that confidence. And I just knowing that sometimes when I think of this too, I think of maybe behavioral issues in a classroom. I've had friends that are teachers and who've struggled with just discipline in the classroom and weren't given the tools to be able to know how to handle that, and to be able to know how to take care of a discipline issue in your classroom, or to be able to say, I know what to do now, I think was really helpful. But they acquired that knowledge from someone else to learn how to deal with what was happening in our classroom, and that changed the atmosphere for all the students. It wasn't just the one they were dealing with, but all the students were able to learn because they said, hey, I don't have the skills for this. So I think that kind of acquiring and sharing of knowledge, I think, is really helpful.
And you bring up an excellent point, because that's a culture where people feel safe saying, I need a hand. Right. And they're not going to feel like they're in trouble or they're vulnerable in any way. They're saying, is there someone here with 25 years of experience who can help me? These new teachers, I have teachers in my family, young teachers as well, and the happiest ones feel really safe raising their hand. I want to hear from everybody. I want to share 2 little stories with you that are relevant to the board's work about the themes we're discussing. There are districts that work with districts up and down the state. You know that through our introduction together. There's this one district where a teacher, and this was a while ago, she was bringing dequadrant learning into the high school, and the classroom looked a little messy. If you were to walk into the classroom, there wasn't direct instruction. The kids were in groups. They were moving around a lot. Really what we've come to know to be very exciting learning, right? The kids were very engaged. And her colleague, she'd gone on her own dime during the summer to a workshop to acquire some skills and some new strategies. Super excited about it. And the entire English department, at the high school said, can we brown bag lunch it with you for a week and will you share with us? And when we, in the district that learned of this, they brought them forward to the board to be recognized, and they began to recognize collaboration, and it wasn't about awards, it was just nurturing that culture of sharing. Conversely, in a district where the sites were looking at scores, math scores, English scores, right, you get all that data and you're poring over it, trying to figure out what worked, didn't work, how do we fortify our practices. And one elementary school just blew math off the charts, and another was struggling in a particular grade level, and they reached out to the other site and they said, kind of, no, we got our secret sauce here. And that gave, true story, and that gave, from a discussion like this, a superintendent is fully empowered beyond his or her own value set, but from this discussion empowered to go over and say, look, I'm not admonishing you in public, but this is bad form. This is not what the board wants or the leadership team wants. So you are giving your superintendent more direction than maybe you even realize when she's working with staff and aligning your millions of dollars worth of resources to be focused on what matters. You're helping her understand from this group what matters and why. So thank you for that. President.
I think the bullet point, this is the one that actually kind of troubles me, and because it raises some more questions for me, because as the employees of Modesto City Schools, we must, so it's the employees must acquire and share. So the onus looks like it's on the teacher to acquire and share. Is the onus on the district or the teacher? And I think that has to be fleshed out. And I think you're hitting on that, because clearly there was a school district that said that we figured it out, but we're not sharing it with the rest of the district. But, you know, so we also want that sharing to be at the, you know, based on what our data is showing us, what you know, Ms. Mack is learning from her data that's showing us where we need to be focused. So the acquiring and sharing new knowledge needs to be, you know, we only have X amount of time in a day. It needs to be somewhat focused. I don't want to waste anybody's time. And so I'm not sure, is the onus on the teacher or the district here, or is it a shared obligation? And then how is that shared? So I guess this one raises more questions for me than I have answers.
And in fact, one of the things I know, and you speak for yourself, that Dr. Noguchi wanted to look at when she comes back to you after discussing with administration further, she wanted to look at, as employees, the word employees and the word must. And is there some reframing of all of this? Because this speaks to the field, less the district, and that's not what the discussion is here. So I believe I'm not putting, that there might be a kind of a tinkering with that when it comes back to the board. Yeah. Thank you for that. More thoughts on that? We're gonna move off of values because there can be no more values.
Okay, we got one more.
Oh, I beg your pardon.
Quick thought, and it's all been said, so it's nothing new, but I want to echo Dr. West and Trustee Lopez when they started. To me, this bullet, and through my lens in the district as a non-instructional support provider, the key to this bullet is the word share. I mean, and as that's been said, share new knowledge and information to provide the best to our students. We can all acquire knowledge. I mean, we've all done that. We've all been to training, and if it just comes back and it just sits in our office or on our desk, it really is not useful. It's not to the best of our students. So I think sharing new knowledge shows competency, and goes back to that first bullet, exhibiting the skills, knowledge, and behavior expected from members of a highly trained profession. When we're able to share what we learn, the knowledge and information, instead of just acquiring it, it hits to collaboration, and it just hits to what I think is a healthy organization. So,
thank you.
Okay, one more, because I'm troubled also, but I'm always troubled. Share new knowledge, to me, I like the concept. What I worry about, because I roll with red flashing lights, is where's the filter on what's valuable versus a boondoggle. I think when we look at education fads, and we're up in the middle of one now, as these things roll over time, what is considered solid versus what is considered chasing something because somebody pitched it? And I like the idea of new knowledge. I like the idea of creative. I like the idea of enabling teachers and staff. What makes me nervous is when something comes from much higher up than us and it quote unquote becomes new and we're going to do it this way. When we do that, we roll at 36 sites over $500 million. That gets very tricky. I like filters. And I think there should be caution there because I don't necessarily think that there's a new fantastic way to teach multiplication that we all have to switch and go to. I think you get back to, you talk about your first point of instruction, getting it right the first time, master teachers, passing that knowledge down to newer teachers and learning that way. That's what makes me nervous about this red flashing lights is a boondoggle. And there's lots of them out there. And they capitalize on districts because we have money and it's taxpayer money. And so my concern is homework and caution.
Thank you. Shiny pennies. Chasing shiny pennies.
Chase shiny pennies.
We're going to move up to vision. And
Are we talking about the last bullet or no?
oh,
Communicate?
no, we're blowing past that one. I'm
Okay.
just no, yes, ma'am, we are. Thank you. Communicate to our students that they are the focus of our work. Students are the focus of our work. We'll begin with you, ma'am.
I only brought it up because I thought were we
didn't-
nixing it or
I didn't, I didn't pull any words out from there, but are there thoughts there that anyone wants to add where you think there needs to be any clarification for your superintendent? Again, remembering, as we began, all words have meaning, and sometimes they have different meaning, and I can say that because I've been married for 35 years. So sometimes you have to say, that's not what that means. Let's clarify what that means. So
I think the last bullet seems to me pretty self-explanatory, and we don't need to do this today, but maybe the next time we meet, the bullet previous to that, to provide the best to our students. The best just seems very vague and nebulous. I think we need to at some point clarify that, what we mean by that.
thank you.
I parts of this I like, just that it's the idea that the students are why we're here. We exist for them to help them succeed. And so I think communicating to them their value and their purpose, I think gives them, they will rise to that value that we put on them. And so we live in a day where I can't say that all children feel valued. So I like the idea that this says to communicate to them that.
Thank you.
I think, Trustee West, I think now is the time to clarify what the language here means. So where we talk about best to our students. So let's run that up the poll as well. So what does that mean when we talk about what's best for our students?
I think the first thing you have to ask when you're trying to define that is who is deciding that. So, I mean, you can't. I know what's best. I mean, best is pretty subjective. So, is it? So that's something. I mean, I recognize the purpose of this is to try and address some of the top-down issues. So, like if we say, well, this is best. But is best based on outcomes? So best would be framed by outcomes. So we get students here. So best can be these category of things that gets us to this outcome. I mean, do you frame best in terms of outcome? Do you frame best in terms of who thinks what's best? So I think that the who is really important, and how you determine it is key. I would argue that best is looking at outcomes, and so what's working. That seems to me best practices. What's working, and that would should frame how we identify what is best.
Well, also, I want to circle back for comment. We'll talk about best. Respectfully, I want to just circle back to what Trustee Mark said and hear, at least get some reaction from all trustees and representatives here today. You expressed something pretty profound and in education always, and in particular today, discussion about children feeling valued and sort of living up to what we see in them. And if we don't see much in them, then there it is. But do we believe in them? Is there room for more discussion on that point? Does anybody else have anything they want to add? Just their thoughts? It's a big thought. It's a very big thought in today.
Try this again. To me, how do you communicate to the students that they're valued is a tough one because our students are so varied and the individuals are so varied. I think it's just being very intentional in communicating that amongst ourselves. If we're sharing that openly and in a positive way, in a very intentional way, that's going to trickle down through our peers that we contact as well as our students and our customers that we contact. Just being intentional to frame our decisions. I'm not making this decision on what I think is best for me or my team. I'm making this decision on what I think is best for our district at large, which to me translates to what's best for our students, letting them know that they're our value. And with regards to what's best, to me when I read what's best, I go back up to the vision statement.
Yes.
What's best is what moves the vision statement ahead in the most effective manner. I'm not sure if that clarifies or not, but to me, that's when I read that, my eyes eventually jump to the top of the page.
That's right.
Are we doing what's best? Are we providing that vision for our students?
Thank you.
I agree with you. I thought the exact same thing was when I thought best, I looked up at the vision statement,
Right.
and it's for students to graduate college and career ready with the knowledge, abilities, and character traits needed to thrive in a global society. So I thought, if we're doing that, that's the best, and that's what we had said that's what we want to do. So I think, to me, that you said it very well.
How is that best in the context of what we're offering our students? So that decision the board was making about, I think I shared this story with you, dual enrollment, dual credit. Budgets were declining severely. We were closing libraries. Everyone remembers these deep cuts. And this was a long time ago before dual enrollment, dual credit was the norm, right? And especially at the secondary level. But a board that was looking at dual enrollment, dual credit specifically for language, because all that was left was one option, and gone were the days of several language options. And the board had learned a young man was driving every Saturday down to UCLA to take Japanese, was doing well in the class on his own, and his mother braving him on the freeways. And he wondered, why do I get credit from UCLA for this class but not from the district? And so began the policy discussion, and the room crowded with people who wanted it and didn't want it, because change doesn't come easy. And the board thinking about its mission statement and its vision statement, and if the decisions we make are guided by what's best for students. A very difficult decision for a board in a heated moment was a little bit easier because they'd had that discussion about what is right for these students and starting there. So that you are going to come back up to your vision and mission statement to answer best. And so think about that. We started with values for a reason. Think about this discussion as we look at the words in vision and mission, and do they resonate? For the teachers, do they resonate throughout the organization? Additional thoughts?
One word, behind best, opportunities, in the sense that you're providing the best opportunities to our students. In the sense that changes the dynamic a little bit, because then what is it we're talking about? I mean, anytime somebody brings up equity, I have to put opportunity in front or behind it, because it has different meaning now. It's been hijacked by the political process beyond recognition. And I think that when you talk about providing the best, well, that's going to change depending on the context we're talking about. Provide the best opportunities, the best opportunity to reach an equitable solution, the best equitable opportunity that you can give somebody that says you had a shot. And the pieces were in place that said if you took advantage of these things, whatever they may be, you had a chance to succeed. Whether that be a 0 period with a student who's struggling in chemistry or a 4th grader who's struggling with reading. The best opportunity may be that in between classes, a lunch crew meeting with other students tutoring. There's different ways to tune that, but if I'm making sense, is that you're providing an opportunity, and whatever that best opportunity we can do in a given situation to enable them to learn is what gets us down the road in my mind. Because every time the bell rings, 30 more people are going to walk in and they're going to have 30 different needs.
And this circles back to the very first point made, trusting your professionals and their judgment. So when they come up with remedies or ideas that we haven't tried before, if it's kid-focused and it's going to help them, you want to embrace it. That's what I'm hearing here. A quick question of the team before we move up to vision and mission statement and words there. Are we talking about all students? Because, let me just frame this for you. I think the obvious answer is yes. But sometimes you will be presented with an idea that's the best for some students, but it's going to require a certain level of resource allocation, time or talent or money, that's going to deny you the opportunity to spread that time, talent, and money over even more students. So the question to you is, are we talking about all students? And if we're not, are you leaving my child out? That's all I want to know.
And I think that comes back to the word equity. And I think that sometimes we need to make sure that the best is going to look different for other people. And for us, it's going to look that we must invest some resources in some other areas to come out with the best solution possible or the best opportunity possible for these students. So I would say yes, but along with that comes equity and making sure that we know that one size doesn't fit all. That we're gonna need to allocate as seems fit, and sometimes it's not gonna be, like you mentioned, it's not gonna be spread around equally, but we need to do that so that we can have the best outcome for all students, however that may look like.
Thank you.
Yeah, those terms again make me nervous because they get taken out of context, and when you add every, all, when does that come back? And somebody again as sitting on a board of education, when the lights go on from the other side, that you get hammered for saying, well, you said every, you said all, you said any, and that makes it very difficult. So I would agree with you, but anytime those 3 words are used, I want boundaries on them, because you can't say every, all, any when you're talking about 30,000 students or the entire staff or the entire CSEA or the entire management team. Tricky stuff.
So are we moving up to our vision statement here? So we're looking, okay, I'd like Mr. Herbst to weigh in on that. I'm putting you on the spot. I know you can handle it.
I can.
So thank you. But like, you're the expert here on this area. What do you think of that sentence?
On equity?
No, on this sentence, every student. What should?
I actually think it should be every student. You bet. I mean, to me, because I think it goes back to what Tara Lynn said. I don't want to give the perception that we're leaving somebody out. And if we are, who is that person or group or type of student? I think we want the best for all of our students. Insert that in there. Now, how we get there, I agree with Trustee Lopez. If you want to talk about an equity framework, I mean, really what you're acknowledging as a fact is just doing a status quo and saying, hey, I made it accessible to everybody isn't equity. What it is, hey, wait a second, we have underserved. We may need to go do more here to get these guys to have the same access of somebody over here. And that's really what you're talking about when you're talking equity. So to me, I would just, my own personal opinion, I'm hesitant to say that it's not all means all. All does mean all, in my opinion. It means all children.
Okay, so every you're good with, but then for some of our special needs students,
Well, I mean, we
They'll
obviously have
graduate,
some
is
of
that
our
a
most
problem?
well, I mean, they still end up walking the stage with a certificate of completion.
Okay.
However, with the exception of some of our most medically fragile, and I really think it's how you define college. I mean, we have students that are in our applied classes that are able to attend a course at JC in an area of interest. Obviously, we want them to be employable, so be career ready. I mean, I guess really we're really talking about a minute portion of the whole special ed umbrella that may not necessarily apply to. And I'm thinking some of the classes, I think it was Trustee Walker who went through Sonoma.
Yeah.
I mean, college and career ready probably is not going to be in the cards for those students, unfortunately. But once again, you're talking a small smidgen of the big umbrella of special education.
thank you.
And yet, you probably are talking about the highest possible goals for those students, everyone achieving their potential, right?
As we should be. Yeah,
As we
that's,
should be.
yeah, there's
That's what
you know, our medically fragile students at Sonoma. You know, I'm very familiar with them, and my kids attended. That's where they went to elementary school. So I just want to make sure that like we're comfortable with those words, because you're the expert.
So to the vision statement, when we look at the word character traits, knowledge, abilities, character traits, are we talking about the 9 character traits? Are you connecting those? Hello, Trustee Brown. Welcome. Did you bring your tardy pass?
I have to tell you, this wasn't on my calendar, and I checked. I did not receive the email. So this was a shock to me that we're even meeting tonight. I apologize. There was an email that went out on the 25th. I found it in my spam tonight after Adolfo texted me and told me that we were in a meeting. So
Well,
I
we
apologize.
are glad you're here.
Thank you.
Yes. Let's circle back to the beginning. I was kidding. Fun group. So character traits, we are talking about the 9 character traits.
Yes.
Okay, very good.
Let me just give you a little history on the 9 character traits.
I think that would be
How
good
did we end up
probably
with
for
9
everybody.
character
Yes.
traits?
Yeah.
So there was a time before I came on the board that there was a very long discussion about character traits being taught in Modesto City schools. They felt like it needed to be part of what parents reinforcing what parents were teaching at home. And so there were committees put together, just like our safety task force. They came up with, I think, 12. And the superintendent at that time decided that it would probably be best if we narrowed it down to 9 so that each month in the school year could focus on one character trait, and the examples and the kiosks could highlight that, and the students could be recognized for those character traits that month. And so depending on how the schools did it. But it was a very it was a lot of work, and I know that some of the ones on the committee felt that they felt like they were not listened to as well as they thought that their ideas were not taken seriously. But then when the schools started implementing it, it really helped build some more trust with the community. And those folks are still around, and they still are appreciative that we're doing the character traits. And I know it means a lot to them that their work wasn't useless, and they felt that those were things that all of society could agree on, and especially coming up with 9 that everyone could agree on was a good thing. And so they wanted our children to recognize that and be taught that. So, and for the staff and the board and I know there's times in the board meeting where people point up there and say, you're not doing this one. And so, but it is a good reminder of how we treat one another, and are we treating each other with respect, and are we being, people with integrity and honest, and all of those things that are valued by the community. So that's where it came from.
Thank you.
I want to echo Trustee Marks. I think the character traits is the 9 that we talked about. What I would want maybe us to think about not having in there is needed to thrive. That part there, I'm not sure. Needed to thrive. I'm not sure that that's the word. Thrive again is really subjective. I like to become contributing members, so that we're we are educating students to become contributing members of our society with these abilities and character traits to become contributing members of our global society. Thrive is that's is it more than contributing? Is it less than contributing? I'm not sure. Contributing is they're adding to it, but thrive is more of a success determination perhaps. And I think with our some of our medically fragile students and some of our other students, then contributing maybe is a better way of putting it.
Thoughts? Yeah. Yes.
So I kind of have a problem with when you're saying about thrive, because correct me if I'm wrong, how does that read, that part where it says strive in there? Can someone read it off to me? Or
needed to thrive in a global society.
Needed to thrive.
Oh. See, I see that this is our vision. Our vision is that we hope that they do thrive, right? That's what we aim for, right? We have to aim for something that bigger than ourselves, right? And I think so. I don't see anything wrong with thrive, because that's our aim. We need to aim for these students to thrive in the world, right? That's what we should come in with, that desire to see people thrive. So I see it as what do we envision for these students? And I think what we mentioned before, we envision the best. We envision that every kid thrives, and however they see that, because definitions, everyone's going to put a label, everyone's going to define thrive to themselves, but we want them to reach their each individual capacity, right? So I don't see anything wrong with thrive, because I think that's what we should aim towards, having these kids thrive in their worlds.
I don't want anything that feels like we're settling, like we're just accepting mediocrity. We just want them to get there to graduate, and I kind of echo what Adolfo is saying. I want to raise the bar and have them see a future beyond where they are right now. And I think Thrive says that. We can be contributing members just by casting a vote. Contributing doesn't tell me that we expect the kids to be the best that they possibly can be.
And thrive doesn't necessarily mean money or status. It means personal satisfaction with where you're. I have a kindergarten granddaughter who's thriving right now in my eyes. Frustrated on any given day over her phonemic awareness, but she's thriving. And so it's just an observation. Are there additional thoughts here from the board, from staff?
I ended up in the same place. I like contributing, thriving as contributing members of society. If I run into global, I cross it out of any policy. It's just reaction, because one, it's too much flowers and too much hype, and I just don't know if it adds anything. When you say needed to thrive as contributing members of society, you're good. And I'll lose this next one all day. When you put college and career ready together, somebody remind me to tell you the story of how that got contributed and created. I don't think that, generally speaking, you are both, unless you're very fortunate. You're going to college, you're starting a career, it's college, career, and life ready. And it just sort of bugs me as a philosophical bit, because I know where that phrase came from. And it was a marketing term that's now taken over anything you do to talk to education. I'll continue to sort of lose that battle. But in my mind, if you're going down a vocational path, then you're at a JC or you're starting a business. That's different than going off to college. And when we put them together, and I'll lose this to my right, because I know we disagree, but I don't put those words together. I just don't. To me, college is one thing, career is a different thing, life is part of that package. And if you were college, career, and life ready, then you're off to the races without me explaining where the marketing came from behind that phrase.
Okay, I just want to remind everyone we're not group editing today. We're not going to rewrite. We're just sharing themes, and the themes we're hearing so far, every student, yes? All students. And we're talking about the character traits that exist within your organization. One thing we might want to look at is how this is organized so that from the outside in, when you see the word character traits, I know what you're talking about, because that made me think, what character traits? But there's some definition for that in your organization that would not be new to me if I just bought a home here and put my kids in your school. It might not be new to the teachers who are newly hired as well. So some organization here, we're talking about thriving or contributing, and one of the discussions we're hearing here, remember, your superintendent's going to hear gaps in this discussion and take it out to broader staff and then come back to you with thoughts from there. But I think the central question to the board right now on the word contribute or thrive, that theme, forget the words, just the theme, do you want to set something very aspirational, which is more the thrive word, and this really should come from the board? And I will start down here. I'd like to hear from you, ma'am, and then we'll move all the way around.
Adolfo convinced me that thrive is a good word because I was happy with contributing members, but we see vision statements and mission statements everywhere. Often they are very wordy, very flowery, very, very long. They don't mean much of anything. And I've not ever seen one with the word thrive in it, so it's a little bit different. It catches my attention, and it is a little bit inspirational. So personally, I do like that.
I actually like both because in a way there's the thrive, and I looked up thrive. It means to grow, whoops, my dictionary, okay, to grow or develop successfully, to flourish or succeed. I like the word flourish just because it added to the word thrive, but when you think of a child flourishing, they're doing really well.
Growing.
And they're moving forward, so I like that. And then for me, I like because to me those were not necessarily action words, those are feeling words. They're a feeling of thriving, a feeling of, I like the contributing members because to me that's a doing word. That's what we're teaching them to feel and aspire to the best that they can be, and then they're going to go out and contribute in some phenomenal way. Now, contributing members, I was on the national, civic engagement task force with Sandra Day O'Connor and the Supreme Court Justice, and we'd started a committee. They wanted us to see if we could help students to become more contributing members because they felt that they were not taking hold of their responsibility as a citizen, and to be able to say, I want to change where I live to make it a better place to live. And in order to do that, I need to start contributing in some way. And here's how I can do that. And one of those was voting, but it's also becoming active, just like the two students that came to our school board meeting, our last school board meeting. They came because they wanted to learn what this process is, because someday they'd like to get on the school board, and they wanted to know how to do that. So just to think that here's two junior high, 8th grade students looking at the future, and to me, they were thriving and they were flourishing, and to me, they are going to be, and they already are, contributing members in our society. So to me, that's what I see. So that was kind of a long answer, but I wanted to explain myself.
No, it's good. It's good.
I think you guys heard my piece on this part.
Thank you.
So to me, that the word vision in our statement has to look as high as we possibly can, and we needed something that's inspirational. So I kind of like the way John put it together is thrive as contributing members. I think that takes both concepts and allows us to look above.
I'm not going to disagree with anybody here. I'm good. I think we ended up in a good place.
I like the idea of combining it because thrive is so individual focused, but contributing is recognition of our place in this world, this bigger world. And perhaps it's because I'm working with my son on applying to colleges, and so you got to look at this whole thing about, this contributing member of society that you're supposed to be when you're applying. But I think that's what we're trying to raise our students to be, to recognize their place in this bigger, broader community. And so Thrive it's an individual, you're thriving, you're striving, it's that personal determination, but contributing recognizes your place in the world. And so I think that it's both. Our character traits acknowledge that. Those character traits don't exist in a vacuum. And so they should create somebody that's capable of thriving on their own and contributing to our society. So that's I think we landed in a good spot.
That's nice. Good discussion. Very good. It gives you a good platform from which you can talk about self-advocacy as well, because that's something I know you're working on with your students. Additional thoughts? I saw some nods over here, but good. We're going to move on to mission. How we'll get there are the words down here. To offer rigorous, relevant, and diverse educational programs that engage all students, there are those words again, in reaching individual potential for college and career readiness. So I'm going to leave that alone for a minute and come down to the bullet points underneath it and ask you to describe a safe and secure learning environment, and further ask you if is it important for you to clarify a safe and secure learning and working environment? And because that's safety and security, our minds immediately move to locks and fire alarms that work and so forth. But there was a lot of discussion earlier about an environment that trusts professionalism and judgment. And so a safe and secure learning and working environment, learning students and learning and working your employees, is that an important word for you to insert there? Is that a theme you want to embrace?
I'd recommend we put that the mission and vision statement should be about our focus on the outside, on our students and who we're serving, and then the how we value it is how we incorporate our people that work for us. So that hopefully we would get that incorporated there, and a safe learning environment. And a safe and secure learning environment. I spent some time on a campus with Brad Goodo, and so we went around. We were chatting with kids on last year on campuses, and he asked a really important question of these students. He said, "Do you have somebody you could talk to here?" Because that was the part about whether the campus was safe. Is there somebody you feel like you could talk to? Is there somebody you can go to? And these kids are all saying, yeah, I do. I feel like I can talk to. And so then he asked the next follow-up question, which is a really good question. Well, who's that? And they would tell us. Oh, it's my coach. It's so-and-so. It's this person. And it was our staff members. And so a safe and secure learning environment is, it's not about gates and locks. It's more than that. It's about students having an adult, having somebody there that they can trust. And so this, to me, I think we just need to understand how broad that is, safe and secure, and learning and environment and opportunities that they have. So
thoughts on that?
And I really like adding the word working environment, because I know teachers that have not felt safe in their classroom. They've had incidents happen, and they were afraid to come back to school. So I really think it goes both ways. Students feeling safe, parents coming on campus, teachers feeling safe, the administration feeling safe, that there's an environment that you're working together for the best interest of everyone on the campus. And whatever that means, somebody calls you and says, I need help, I've got, this student, whatever's happening on campus right now, is there somebody you can call for help and work with and get whatever you needed taken care of right then, and without injuries is our main focus. But I think for everyone, that's a good working environment. And I believe I talked about this, I can't remember if I talked about it in my small group in the safety task force, or if I talked about it in a large group, but the idea was if you're happy to go to work and you feel good at the environment that you're in, you're going to do a better job than if you're dreading it or you're fearful. And I added fun. I said in safety you can have fun, and I saw somebody laugh over there. And so but to me, it was the idea that you can have fun when you feel safe and you're not afraid. So if you think of children that are laughing and playing, they feel good. And when you feel good, you can learn anything, you can do anything, you have great self-esteem, you're going for the next thing. And I think, but if you don't feel that way, you're not going to be able to move forward. And so I just want to add the word working, like you had said, and that just plays into, or at least goes along with what we were talking about this last week in the safety task force.
I feel like the mission is really for our students, and if we feel like the working environment has to do with our employees, what about our values, including the safe and secure environment for employees under our values? Because I do believe it's important for our staff to feel safe where we're really working on that, but it seems like it should be under our values. That's just a suggestion.
Yeah, I like the idea of having it in both,
Okay, thank you.
I like having it in both as well. As we've had the focus of our bond measures, if we look at these two words, they have a completely different meaning than they would have 2 years ago. And what it tells me is we've got to be spending money to make sure that we're providing that safe and secure environment. And we've got to do everything that we possibly can from the board perspective to ensure that, so that families feel safe sending their kids, and kids feel safe being there, and that our entire staff feels safe in the roles that they've been given. So.
And from President Newman's, we're going to get a comment over here. Good. From President Newman's comments, safe environments. Do you have someone to talk to? You can see as trustees where when you're getting a report on counseling services and family support services, that fits into this very specific point. So these discussions are very guiding for your superintendent as she allocates resources and makes recommendations to you apropos of your priorities.
So just kind of tag teaming on what you just said, I want to remind everybody that safe and secure learning environment is far more than locks and doors. Most of the time it is social emotional for kids. They don't go to school worrying that there's going to be a school shooter every day, but they do worry about the kid who picks on them at recess. They worry about the fact that there's no discipline going on. Those are real issues to kids, and we need to be focused not just on, do we have a single point of entry at the school?
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Yeah, thank you. And I see nods all around.
No, I would say that certainly we don't get to talk to everybody because we have to be in a meeting, but we have certainly had that conversation between the two of us that you just talked about as parents. All that being said, I like this statement. I actually typed it up and put it into another policy already. It's ready to go. Shocking. But the point that I think I like the most about this as far as vision is data-driven decisions. That we look at what's in front of us, and as part of our values and our mission and how we make decisions, that the actual data drives that decision. That we're not sitting there going, okay, at some point something's going to work umpteen times down the road. You know, where are we at now? What does it show now when we talk about making decisions about any number of things that will come before us and we're spending money and chasing something? Data-driven decisions, because at some point that matters.
You know, going back to what Doug said, really the primary purpose of our safety task force, which is made up of internal and external partners from the community, law enforcement, and such, is to define safety, just like you said. So safety goes beyond, single entry and moves out to both the student perspective, the teacher perspective, the staff perspective, the parents perspective, and what does that look like? And then what can we do long range, bringing recommendations to the board, 3 and 5 years out, what can we do to ensure that we're continually working on that and creating the best environment that we can?
So I just would like to add one more thing that kind of fits in here, and it goes along with Trustee Walker talking about data-driven decisions, and it goes back to your talking about fads in education, okay? I'm not going to suggest that data is not important, but one of the things in the current fad of education that seems to have been forgotten is that the craft of teaching is equal parts science and art. Data is science. You can study the data. The art of teaching is something that is innate and it's not necessarily learnable. And we seem to have forgotten that a quality teacher is equal parts of both.
And I would agree wholeheartedly in the sense that if you get me in a place where I can actually go kind of off script, I would argue that more often than not, I'm probably using data to try to get back to empowering teachers to do what they do best. And I think I got in trouble at the last meeting about less of it because I think there's too much of it out there that essentially turns it into a fog. When you add on all the different levels and layers that they're piling on top that we have to dig through, it is a fog, and you can lose track of what exactly you're talking about, and I wish we got back to more of it. We are about 2 millimeters apart.
So what I'm hearing here is safe and secure is, I just love that you said that, by the way. I hope children aren't worried, and I don't believe children are worried about all the active shooter training and all that we're going through right as adults. But just that environment, that is nurturing and allows them to contribute and to feel good about themselves and to thrive. So we heard that as really a very shared theme up here, which is good for your superintendent to hear. Yes, Trustee Brown.
Real quick, as I heard you say that, Doug, I misunderstood one word that you said. When you said art, I heard heart. And the heart of teaching is just as important as the art. You know, the love of what they're doing plus the love of the students that is shown in the quality of the work that they do.
The second bullet point is to deliver high quality first time instruction. And so, much to the chagrin of virtually everyone in this room, I came into a briefing meeting with your superintendent and asked her, what does first time instruction mean? So I think when you are limited in the word choice that you have on a piece of paper, you need to make sure the words make sense to everyone who reads them. So there's a little bit of inside baseball going on with that, folks. She told me what it means, and I'm just going to ask you, what are you saying? What does that mean?
There's an acronym that goes with it. It's called GIFT. Good instruction, first time. Which I think is good, but I think that it's recognizing that each day, for me as a board member, it's recognizing each day costs us, what is it? It's like $1 million a day for us to have school, right? Thereabouts. So right around there. So each day is valuable. So recognizing the value and the investment we've put into each day, that first instruction is we're counting on you. We're counting on everybody to do what they can to give that first instruction the best. So we don't have to go back. Remediation costs all of us money. And when we need to remediate skills of our students, that costs a lot of money. It costs a lot of time. It hurts our students. They get discouraged. And so, you know, you take the money and all of that out of it, it's hurt students. So I think that first time instruction is valuing every day and giving that the top-notch instruction that we can every day. So it's a recognition of the valuable time we have.
So I'm just going to suggest that if vision and mission are about students, your last 3 bullets are about staff. Yeah. Modeling high expectations is really addressing all of our employees. Making data-driven decisions, no, I'm hearing no. And you can model the. I could see where you could play, but first-time high-quality instruction is not about your students the way it's just been described. So you're going to have to decide, are your vision and mission more about your students and then dropping down to your values. You're talking about what the organization values, because I heard both here.
Yeah, you're right.
I also can see it as this is what we're providing students. So I'm twisting it in my mind.
Right,
It's not what the teachers need. Yeah, I could see where you were going, but I also read it as this is what we're providing students and that
Okay.
we're agreeing to provide students in our mission.
Okay.
That's how I read it.
All right.
But back to Terry Lynn's question, is first time instruction too vague? Should we have more clarification of it? I mean, we kind of know what it means because we talk about it, but is it something we want to flesh out?
I think you add to that, yes, because just like she just said, she wasn't aware of it. I know it is because we talk. But if I was just sitting at home and I heard it on the radio, I wouldn't know what it meant. And so, yes, I would add something around that to support it. And then, you know, as far as looking at the data-driven decision part about it, if we're making decisions for our students at certain levels, we've got to be looking at how we get there.
I'm not going to tell you how to write it. We're not wordsmithing here, but the discussion I'm hearing is optimizing learning and teaching opportunities. And the way I read it was that you're sort of telling your teachers you're not making the most of that first pass and we're spending a lot of time on remediation. That was how I read it from the outside in. And I don't think that's what you're saying. I think you're saying, and I'm hearing in your teachers, we're optimizing all learning and teaching opportunities, whether social, emotional, or direct instruction in some other way. But I was just confused by this one, and I wanted to hear the board talk about it, not rewrite it, but talk about it so that your superintendent can take it back out again back to staff, administration, union leadership, and say, what do we want to come back with here that really is a shared vision? What are we saying? Trustee Brown, thoughts?
Well, I think it needs to be clarified.
I think, so what comes to mind as you were talking was making the most of the instructional minutes that the students are in the classroom. So I was on a California School Board Association, the president that year put me on a committee for instructional time. And she did a lot of research. She actually did research in our district before she did that on her doctorate thesis on Hanshaw Junior High. It was really neat, you know, so different ones, Pedro Noguero would talk about and reference her work on Hanshaw Junior High at times. But in learning on that, I recognized, I didn't realize how many minutes that's, if you took 5 minutes in every class at the beginning of class and 2 or 3 minutes at the end of every class, that you lost this instructional time that was extremely valuable. So the teachers who were making the most of that time had papers actually on the desks, and for students, as soon as they came into class, they started working on that day's problem that was on the board, and they'd started working on it. It could be an English task, it could be a math one, it could be science, whatever the teacher was teaching. And they found that that was extremely beneficial to the students because it, without adding more hours or more minutes to their day, they added more hours and more minutes to the whole year, and even days when you added those up. So when I think of delivering high quality instruction, and we'll have to decide or define what first time instruction is, I'm seeing it making the most of the time that you have the students.
Right. Imagine your teachers are too.
I think so.
Yes. Thoughts?
I think my members would agree with you, Terry Lynn, that it implies that they're not doing a good job teaching. Just thinking about it, what it connotates to a parent at home. Oh, well, the district expects them the first time they introduce a topic to do a really good job, but tomorrow when I come back and reteach it, I don't have to do such a good job, and on Friday when I review, maybe I'm not even there. I just think it's a strange way to describe quality education.
I knew it came with a great intention. I knew it when I asked you, but I'm sensitive to the sort of inside baseball language sometimes. And if we want to be inclusive, then I just thought you wanted to define. So we'll come back with some other thoughts on that, knowing what you're really trying to do, which is optimize all of your time with kids. And modeling high expectations, we have an
I just want to make one more overall quick statement, and that is when I listen to the trustees talk, most of the examples that you folks give are all high school or 712 at least. When you talk about changing classes, different teachers, and I want you just to remember that half of your district is elementary school.
Thank you. That was a good reminder. Thank you. Modeling high expectations. Are we? No thoughts there? No language change?
So the statement was that this is expectations of our staff, but I think that we need to somehow broaden it so that it's that we want our students to model the things that they're learning and the expectations that we place on them. So we talked about the character traits in the vision. That's very much a modeling that we expect of our students, to model each of those traits.
Would you want that third bullet to connect to the character traits?
So are we wanting this to say model high the teachers are to model high expectations, or we as a district model high expectations for our students? I mean, what expectations are high? Are they high for the students? Are they high for the teachers? I'm a little confused by this point, but I mean, I think they should be high, but I'm just wondering what is our intent here?
Well, let's read this.
Yes.
To offer rigorous, relevant, and diverse educational programs, that's you.
Yes.
It's not the students, that engage all students in reaching individual potential for college and career readiness. We will, so it's us, we will provide a safe, secure learning and working environment. We will deliver high quality instruction, optimizing our time with students, something like that. We will model high expectations. So I think this is you. The way it's written, that can be changed. And what does it mean to, let's just stay with where we're at right now. If it is you, what does it mean to model high expectations?
I think the question is model high expectations for our students, for our staff. So the district will model high expectations for whom?
Well, what are high expectations?
Yeah, that's the other question.
Teachers? You want to? What would this mean to you as a new employee in the district if you read this?
Teacher, but they handed me the mic. I asked for it.
A new employee.
To me, again, when I read model high expectations, my eyes again jump back up to the top of that page. Are my actions supporting our vision? And when I think model high expectations, I think not only am I modeling that for the students, but I'm also modeling that for my peers. I'm modeling that for my coworkers. I'm modeling that for my direct reports. I'm trying to set the bar as high as humanly possible in regards to what are my actions and are they supporting the vision in the most effective manner.
Okay.
Civility, respect, all those things are great, but specifically, how do they move our mission forward? How do they provide that education? How do they provide that opportunity to our students? I do see it as an all of the above.
Makes sense. Thank you. All right. We will make data-driven decisions. Thoughts on that?
So this is kind of segueing off of what Doug said in some, a very recent article I just read, looking at in North Carolina, teachers who were good at raising test scores were not necessarily good at improving non-academic behaviors that were actually more correlated with higher success in being college or career ready or life ready than just increasing test scores. So the temptation again can be, we can increase SBAC scores 3%, 8%, 10%, and that can be our focus and that can be all that matters to us. Or we can increase test scores, and we can also increase students' motivations, their adaptability, their ability to deal under stressful situations and working in group environments, things that are not necessarily easily data driven, but are still very important to them being college and career ready. And I think it's important not to lose sight of that. That when they get out to the real world, whether they're going to Stanford, Harvard, Stanislaus, or working at a restaurant, no one's going to ask them, what was your SBAC score, right?
The SBAC is only one piece of the data. I mean, when you look at our data dashboard that we just went over, we've got the AP pass rate, we've got suspension, expulsion, we've got dibbles, we've got some very attendance. That's a key thing. I mean, because you're going out and you're career ready, you got to be able to show up for the job. So there are some other pieces of data that we're looking at, and I think that we shouldn't look at data myopically, but I do think we've got to have something that drives the decisions. So I think data should drive some of the decisions with the with acknowledgement that our character traits, with the vision statement at the top, the character traits are important. Those are some of the things that you're mentioning, Yasser.
I'm very concerned that students begin to see their self-worth in their test scores and their grades. And students are so much more than that. So I understand that we have an importance of looking at the data, but I think sometimes we put too much emphasis on the test scores and not enough on some other important things that students need. And also I've seen data skewed. We can make data show anything we want. Data frequently, I'm not talking about test scores, but I've seen so many reports where it's given as this is a fact, this is what the data says. But when you really truly look at it, it's not accurate data. So I think we have to be careful what kind of data we're using, and we need to make sure that it is reliable data, not just some numbers that someone's thrown out to.
If I can interject, something that I'm hearing partly from Doug and also Amy is the notion of and Yasser is the whole child. So in part of ensuring that our students are going to be successful and we're meeting our vision statement is that we recognize it is more than just a test score. It's more than just an aptitude, but it's how are we working to support their self-worth and their drive and their grit and conflict management and all the other pieces that play into all of us as adults and as children. So we may consider adding maybe another bullet in there around whole child, because that encompasses more than character traits and it adds more than just the academic piece. And we know across the district, many teachers, that certainly is what they do on a daily basis, or it may not be the language for it. Call it SEL, call it whole child, and we can come up with a packaged definition of it. But at the end of the day, we're looking at many different aspects of the child.
Can I expand on that? There's a lot of research on teacher-student relationships, or the whole culture. Goes back to who do you go to? And we don't have anything about that in here. And I love data, but I believe data is only a piece. But I really believe, and there's research back of that relationship with teachers and students, and we really don't have that culture piece in here somehow. I'm not saying that's the exact word to use, but I think we are missing a piece here.
But it's all around that same theme.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I have to agree with multiple people in the room. I think that if we're just making data-driven decisions, I mean, we talked about earlier, Mark mentioned that sometimes there's going to be extra resources, or we need to focus in an area more than we do in others, just so that we meet the demand. So I think that we need to make qualitative and quantitative driven decisions, because the data just gets us halfway, or it might not get us halfway. But I think that we need to look at, as you mentioned, the student as a whole, and how do you, when you talk about mental health, when you talk about issues that are happening that affect student academic outcomes, how are you going to measure? Do I feel a 5? Are we taking, or a 6? Are we taking are we just making our decisions based on rubrics or metrics that might not get to the core of the problem? So I do agree that we need to look more at the student as a whole.
So I had the same thought that Marla was driving down, that we're missing a big piece, and it goes back to what Doug said about data being just part of the formula, that the art and my word of heart we're missing from what our mission is. And a mission is really what drives us to help our children thrive, whether that be at an elementary level or junior or high school level. We've got to be able to focus on that individual student and, like Sarah was saying, their self-worth and their understanding of who they are and what their potential is. And data doesn't quite touch that.
There's a school in Southern California where a friend of mine teaches, and they had abysmal scores in a particular area, math, anyway. And they kept looking at the data, kept asking questions around data and instruction and so forth. And the teacher said they're starving when they come to school in the morning. They are so hungry. And they made a change around food service. And it really reading the data wasn't taking them there. But they really did make arrangements with food service for this particular class. Anyway, that is a whole big picture. And it was a culture theme, too. So I think you've touched on something really wonderful that your superintendent will be able to take, again, the accordion. So additional comments here, Ms. Marks?
We didn't say we were taking out data-driven
No.
decisions. All right, okay.
No.
Because I was going to say, we make data decisions on just about everything. How much we're spending on certain things are data-driven. If we can't afford it, we have to say no, we can't. If we have the funds to do it, we can add new programs. So we ask ourselves all the time, like, what are we doing and why are we doing it? And is it something that's needed? And then how can we inform ourselves? What's the information that we have available? And that's going to come in some kind of data so we can be informed and then make the decision. And I think that really does help us make a better decision. But granted, there are ways that data can be manipulated and can be used in wrong ways. And that I've seen that happen over time as well. So we need to be careful how we use data, but I can't say that I don't want to. I believe that it is needed in many ways, and we're rated on everything. The state of California takes data from our districts, and we receive funding based on that data every single day. We have to write down how many students are in class, and our funding is based on that. So when I think of data, it's used in a lot of different ways, but it does help us say, these students are missing from class today. How can we help them come to school every day? That will help them get more instruction. They will do better. So those are data-driven decisions. And granted, there's ways to misuse it and make it more difficult. And I don't believe that's our desire to do that. We want to help everybody move forward and not just some. And I have friends who are teachers, and I know their fear of, how are my students going to do? And when those test scores come out, there's a lot of anxiety. So absolutely, I get that.
Very important, not your only lens of analysis.
That's right.
Absolutely.
So one last thing, so if I can clear a little bit of ground. Part of my issue with the data thing is, one, I like it, and two, I don't. And the part I don't like, which maybe you can clarify for those who have heard me say why I do not allow my children to test and why I don't like the test, is that at the end of the day, the way they're using the data at the state level is driving every single element of instruction. They are putting a test to science, a test to English, a test to math. It's all tied to standards, and it doesn't come back to the district. And my problem with it is, and I look at a statewide brain, it's horrible. Then why are we continuing to go down that road? I'm not in a position to have that conversation tonight, but if you want to know what my philosophy behind looking at it is, to go back and say, how long are we going to keep doing this and not putting instruction back into the hands of the district and local control? And so there's lots of data we can use, but when I hammer the test, my problem is that it ties to instruction. It goes back to the classroom, and whoever created this nasty mess, it's literally driving every element of every instruction and procedures at every level. And that's the wrong approach to me. And so, yes, I use it, and that's why I don't mess with the test, and I wish more didn't, but that's why. It's not that I don't want scores. It's not that I don't want to know how students are doing. It's not that we shouldn't have benchmarks to be able to say this first grader and this third grader is doing okay. The question is it valid? Is it verified? And that test isn't, because the person who did the analysis on it is a subcontractor, different subject. You don't have one of your employees evaluate you. That's paid for contract. But so when I clarify why I have issues with the test and why I use data certain ways, that's why. And that is what bothers me about it very much on all levels, because it does drive decisions in a bad way as well as good ways.
And we have one last bullet here: to ensure academic equity and access. Are equity and access the same thing?
I think there's a word missing there, that opportunity. And because there's an element here when you're talking about equity and access, that there's an individual element of seeking opportunity, and there's an individual responsibility in that as well. So we can provide some of the opportunities, but whether they're going to access them or not, there's some individual choice that's involved in that. So this gets messy when we're talking about this, because I think that opportunity needs to be in there, and there needs to be an acknowledgement of individuals. So that there's not an easy answer on those words. They create a lot of issues.
I'm actually going to, if you don't mind, turn to staff over here and ask you to comment on words equity, access, and a word we're seeing more and more of today that isn't here, but it's been discussed, and that is engagement. Students who feel safe and secure engage in their learning. So maybe you could offer some thoughts here, Team Terrific, on equity, access, and engagement. No, sorry.
Equity and access first. Access to me kind of goes down to the root of what I had said before. Access is opening up the door and giving somebody the opportunity to go through it. Equity is not all people know that the door's even open. So whereas the more well-to-do, I come from this background, I know the road to where I'm going because I grew up middle class, because my parents came home every night, I got a good dinner at night, and they checked on my homework and all that stuff. Equity realizes that, hey, wait a second, not all people know about those doors and those avenues to get there. Therefore, we have to do something for that group to give them that same knowledge and those same quote-unquote opportunities. To me, that's it's funny, out of all the bullet ones, I actually don't like the one that, well, there's two of them that I didn't like the way that they read. This is one of the ones I don't like the way it reads, personally. And then you would engagement. I mean, typically, well, I can't, I'm going to make a global generalization, and I don't mean to, but typically the people with whom we're trying to promote equity are typically the ones that are the most unengaged. And that's usually what leads to the problem. I mean, that's the challenge, is to get the people that typically don't have access, so to speak, or if you look at it from an equity lens, they're typically the ones that are the least engaged in what we need them to be engaged in order to give them a sense of equity.
Right. And may not even know what to ask, what's available to them in some cases. Absolutely.
I don't know if I covered that well enough, Marla, if you want to chime in. Or
the comment I would add is more ensuring that systems are not in place that, whether intended or not, deny someone the opportunity or the access to a path toward a certain level of success.
So now we'll turn to the... Yes, now we turn to the board.
Could I ask Mark, I really liked what you said. So would you keep equity in there or take it out? How would you phrase it?
gosh, it's the word. I'd have to think about it. The ensure academic equity. I wouldn't want to use a term like promoting academic equity. I mean, what we're trying to do is we're trying to provide equitable outcomes. I mean, is really what we're doing. You got to give me a sec. I got to think that one through.
Yeah.
I don't like the term ensure academic equity. I don't really know what that means.
And we don't even necessarily need to rewrite it tonight. He can hear from you as a board, and staff can hear from everyone what you're thinking, your sort of philosophy on it, your values on it, and they can come back to you with thoughts on how that might be changed.
I asked him because I really like that, and something similar to what I would say, but I think he did a really good job. So I just kind of like I was trying to like elaborate from that, so I just kind of wanted to get more knowledge from him. So I'll defer to my workers.
Oh, thank you, Trustee Lopez.
Thank you.
I know we're not wordsmithing, but maybe something along the lines of offering academic opportunities and offering support for additional support for those who need it, something like that.
I like support. Yeah, I like support. I think that's a good, that probably needs to be in there. Support.
Support part does, just because just the initial of offering wouldn't be equity. Offering
I'm not sure
is hey, we've got you're offered the chance to enroll in that AP class. Everybody's been offered that. Equity is now, okay, we offered, I'm going at that group now, or the underserved to try to get to promote, to use other methods to get them into those AP classes, using that example.
Right, and that would look like support.
Correct. It would be in the form of some sort of support. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Thank you.
You know, many of you that have seen me on the, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Many of you have gone to the focus group meetings. You've heard me say one of my core values, and it's not getting at all of this, but it hits some of it, is to ensure equity and access to both academics and opportunities, because part of what we're talking about is we're talking about being successful with the academic portion of school, but there's a whole nother side of school is in the opportunities in the before and after school, in the sports, in the arts, and in many different actions that some students have access to naturally, because that's what's happening in middle class, their families, that and such. So opportunities past the academics, I think, needs to be in there somewhere, because that's something that I am hearing from parents in this focus group, is having more opportunities for kids, and that goes back to the engagement. Don't know what all that language looks like, but I think there's two sides to the coin there.
Oh, there was Trustee Brown and okay.
So I see this as a visual with a race, and not everyone starts at the same starting point, and the finish line is variable, but somehow we've got to provide all the pieces in between that opens awareness and allows every child a chance to find out who they are. And so I think we need to recognize that in whatever language we come up with, and I like the direction that Mr. Herbst was taking us.
So as I'm thinking about this, I had talked about communicating to our students before on our values, but when I think about the students, the thought that I had was, how can we value the students in this actual statement? So I put value each student and ensure opportunities for academic access or success. I don't know if that's but to me, academic success will incorporate it. But when you value each student, you're treating everyone with I'm going to help you, lift you up. And to me, each student is an individual, and they each have different needs. But if I value every single one of them, then I can help ensure that they're going to have the opportunities for academic success.
I think your staff's going to come back to you with some language there that
Okay,
will reflect the sentiments that have been expressed here, which is that they don't beautifully put. They, you know, some know the door is there and they go sign up for
I
it,
like that,
or go through it, and others don't even know it's there. And they all need to know it's there and that we believe in them. There's this district up in the Bay Area. They couldn't believe the same kids kept getting into this class. They're like, we cannot even get this flyer in the hands of parents and other demographic groups before the class is full here. And they put different strategies in place to communicate out that the program was available and expanded the program as well. But anyway, that was about just knowledge that opportunity is available. So the sentiment has been made clear by the board. You've made your way through a lot of discussion. I'm sure when we started tonight, you were looking at this thinking, this is going to be an interesting exercise, and I'll participate, but maybe hopefully now you'll see even more how valuable it is for your superintendent to hear these words discussed and the thoughts behind the intention behind these words, where they should be maybe revisited to be clearer, and how they provide shared goals for your organization. Yes, ma'am.
As you're speaking, just one thought that we might want to add in our mission of how we're getting there might have something to do with communication, because we don't have anything about communication in here.
Okay, we will just make we'll flag that.
Communication with our community, our parents, and you know, like that is missing. That our community kind of recognizing that.
Bless you. And I would imagine also with all of your employees, communication not only out, but in.
Yeah.
That two-way communication.
Well, you've mentioned, I think you mentioned about the relationship part, and so maybe that could be a part of the relationship.
So I want to thank you, and this will come back to you from your superintendent. She said tonight is the first night in a process, so nobody needs to panic that there are new values and missions going on out there tomorrow. But I also want to remind the board that when this does come back to you, this is your tool. This is your most important tool. So when a recommendation comes to you, you'll ask, how were our teachers engaged in the process here? This sounds like a wonderful program that you have at your site. How are we sharing these best practices with one another? These are places that you get, your power tool is question, and this will give you really good questions to ask that help facilitate the culture change that we're beginning to see. That sounds like it's resonating with people, and you hold on to those, because then the board, your staff knows we better be ready for this one, because the board's going to ask, are we sharing this best practice with other, how did we inform our parents? How did students know this was available to them? Those are all your questions to own from your direction tonight. Are there additional thoughts? I'm going to close this out. I want to say that you guys are a really terrific group to work with, and it's obvious that you really care about kids, and so it's nice to hear. Thank you for that. And we're closing out with, I think you have board protocols that you've been drafting. They've been in process over a couple of months, I think, and there's some changes to them for you to take a look at, bring back your thoughts, and your superintendent's going to clarify the objective there. And
perfect. Thank you, Carolyn.
While I drink water.
Exactly. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it. All right, I'd like to, just as we transition out, I'd like to direct your attention to two things. You have two things in front of you. One, it says effective governance spectrum, and I want to bring a little bit of voice to this. And then also we have board protocols and norms. So first, Carolyn talked about a tool. So the vision, mission, values, that will be a tool, that one of the many tools that you use as board members as you do the work individually and then collectively as a whole. Something that John shared with me this weekend, he was going through his board governance training. I pulled a couple sheets from a lot of information that he sent me, because I think it's pertinent to try to understand and try to have a context of everything that we're trying to do here. This year, really trying to set the foundation, trying to set the stage to be able to do the great work moving forward. So if you take a look at the spectrum, the first, how we behave. That's our beliefs, our principles, our norms. That's exactly what we've been talking about to a large extent today. Our policies and our bylaws, we recently just had those at the last board meeting. That's really how we behave. Really governing and giving us some guidelines on that. And we still have many more bylaws that are going to be coming forward in this next 3 or 4 months. The very last two really speak to the protocols. It's how we operate. Again, going back, how do we operate individually as a board member to myself? What can be requested? What cannot be requested? Do you go straight to Mr. Zerley for information? Do you not? How do we behave at a board meeting? Just the it's really our guidelines for our behavior. It's kind of what I call the rules of engagement. So they're not policies. No, they're not policies. They're just they're guidelines. So there was something that that struck me this weekend that I think really brings clarity to the protocols, and how are the protocols really different than our bylaws, which is a board policy that you vote on. And it's midway through that says page 60. It's the second page, and I'm going to read the one sentence. It says, protocols are tools grounded in mutual understanding of respective roles and responsibilities and strengthen the capacity of the board to engage in constructive relationships with staff and in the community in support of student and learning. So that really just frames the purpose and the point. It's like, why are we having these protocols? And this, I have had this question. Why have the protocols if we have the bylaws? It really is kind of a cheat sheet, a Cliff Note version of how we operate. So what I'd like is we move forward to our next board meeting, which is November 13th. It's not the next board meeting, but the board meeting in November 13th. We will go through the protocols again, something that was done, if you remember when we discussed the board protocols last time, there were quite a few comments and ideas and reflections that the board members had. This new version of the protocols and norms, your comments and your questions and your feedback have been integrated into this new set. Last time we were discussing it. This time, again, this will be a first read, and we can continue to be able to give feedback and comments. So I'd like for everyone to be prepared for that that conversation, which will happen on November 13th. Gives you plenty of time to be able to look through that. And if you have any questions, feel free to ask me during our one-on-ones or between now and November 14th or 13th. Does anyone have any questions on that or any comments?
The red are the ones, the items in red are the ones that we discussed last board meeting.
The no, actually, in the red and underlined, we've had board protocols in place since 2013. The board has voted those in. So the red and the underline are things that were added that since the 2013 version. So that's what they are. And then there's additional red and underline are things that we discussed. So going through, those are things that are different from the protocols from 2013.
Thank you.
So that's how you read those. And they're underlined too, because if they were copied, then the red doesn't show up. So.
And the strikeouts are ones that
they were struck out from the previous the 2013.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments, feedback? And again, you can feel free. We've got plenty of time between now and then, so feel free to provide me any feedback. I do want to thank everyone because I know it's late. It's 20 after 6, and everyone is hungry. Everyone's thinking about dinner. So I appreciate your time and energy. Again, this is a beginning process. I do think that at the end of the day, and I'm going to go back to something Yasser said at the beginning of this meeting, and that is a feel that there may be a culture shift. Cultures don't just happen because we want it to happen or because we talk about it. It really happens by design. This helps us with that culture shift as we work to really create a system where everyone is working together, and that's another one of my core values that folks have seen in that presentation that I've given at least 15 times, so it's truly embedded. But I strongly believe that for a functioning district to do the best that it can for our students and our parents, from the boardroom to the classroom, we have to be in sync. And this is just one of the many tools, and these are just words on a paper the question is, how do we make this operationalized? And part of it is having you at the table. So I appreciate you coming in and providing your feedback, and Terrell for asking some good questions and keeping us on track and not allowing us to wordsmith. So with that, I thank you.
And are there any questions from the public? We need to allow time for that. Any questions? Any additional questions? All right, then I'm looking for a motion for adjourn. All right, it's been moved by Trustee Marks and seconded by Trustee Lopez. All those in favor? Aye. State all. We're adjourned. I don't